Educational Learning Series. Today we are talking about technologies for authentic assessment. But before we get started, we're going to do something different. So we're going to take you through the basics of Microsoft Teams. So if you look at the top of your screen, you will see all of these icons. You should see all of these icons. If not, that's okay. Sometimes Microsoft Teams is disloyal. So left-hand side, you will see an icon of two people. If you click on it, it will say show participants, okay? And that's where you'll be able to see who has joined the session, who hasn't joined the session, who do you need to remind to join the session. Then the next icon that we have is the chat feature. And I am going to stop sharing my presentation now because I'm going to go to my Microsoft Teams and I'm going to ask you to click on the chat feature and share an emoji of how you are feeling right now. I know exactly how Shayla and I are feeling. I think we're excited. Beaming, yeah, that's our emoji. So colleagues, please just share emojis of how you're feeling right now. Okay, Shayla and I have the same energy, matching each other's energy. Hi, Nontlantla. She's feeling cool. I like this. I see Bhavna. Hi, Bhavna. Hi, Shira. I love it. Thank you so much. Anyone else want to share? All right, that's absolutely fine. Now, the next, go ahead, Ashad. Thank you so much, Angie and Ashad. The next icon that you will see on your screen is the reactions icon. So if you click on the reactions icon, you will see that there is the raise the hand icon, which I think we're all very familiar with. There's the like icon button. There is the love reaction. There's the applause. There's the laugh, and there is the surprised. Please react to choose a reaction. I just want to see reactions going up. So Shayla is surprised. She had no idea these existed. I like it. Nhlanhla is also surprised. Greg is laughing. Keenan, I saw you. Maletema is laughing. Ashad, thank you so much. This is an engaged class or session that we have. Penny says, can't find them. Penny, I'm so sorry. Like I said, it does happen. Sometimes it's the version. Sometimes it could be that maybe you're logged in with a different account. There's many reasons why Microsoft Teams might be a bit sabotagey, but here we are. Hopefully in your next session or when you're in your own session, you'll be able to do that. Thank you so much. Then we have the apps icon. Don't worry about that one. We have the more actions, which is the three. There we go, Shira. Thank you so much for that. So Penny is not logged in as a VITSI. Okay, so that's what happens when you're not logged in as a VITSI. Thank you so much, Shira. I'm going to put a like on that one. Then we have the camera icon. I know not everyone wants to click on the camera icon, but Shayla and I are going to open our cameras and we're just going to wave to you so you can see that we're not robots. I don't know if you can see me. Can you see me, Shayla?
I can see.
Oh, there I am. Hi, everyone. Thank you. If you would like, you can open. Thank you so much. Hi, Nika. I love this energy. Thank you so much. Is someone else? Hi, Bhavna. Nice to see you too. Welcome to the session. The next icon that we have is the microphone icon. Mine is currently on. Jennifer. Hi, Dr. Hall. Let's see. Oh, maybe the screen is closed. Good to see you, Dr. Hull. Then we have the microphone icon. We all have it. I'm going to ask one brave soul to raise their hand, open their mic, and just say hi. We just need one brave soul. All right,
Hello.
thank you so much.
Hello.
Shira raised her hand, so we're going to ask Shira to go first, then we're going to ask Keenan.
It's just because everybody's too shy to be the first one. So now I started, everyone can do it.
Hi, Shira, please say that one more time.
I said everybody's too shy to be the first one to speak. So once I started the ball rolling, everyone can do it now.
I absolutely love it. I'd like to encourage everyone to be the first one. Let's be pioneers in this session. Thank you so much, Shira. Keenan.
Afternoon, everyone. Hi, guys.
Hi, Keenan. Afternoon, Dr. Howell.
Super excited for the session.
Thank you so much. Excited to have you. Hi, Dr.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me. But it's nice to be in this session. Okay.
Awesome. We hear you loud and clear.
Okay, excellent.
Then the next icon is the sharing. Unfortunately, you cannot play around with this button because that's just for me and Shira. And then we have the big red button, which is the leave icon, which I believe we will all click at the end of the session. All right. Now that we are familiar with these icons, I'd like to encourage you to use them throughout the session because we acknowledge that not everyone might be willing to open their mic or their camera to say and speak up, but please feel free to use the reactions, use the chats so that we know that you are with us throughout the session. All right. I am going to minimize that and maximize my screen. We all know these. We've been on Microsoft Teams for a very long time, but we thought, let's just do a quick refresher. Please remember to keep your mic muted unless you need to speak. For better reception and data conservation, please make sure you keep your video off. Let's avoid talking over each other. To avoid this, we can use the raising your hand icon. And by all means, feel free to use the chat and reactions window. Ignore the large meetings part. Here's an overview of our session. So we are here to delve into into the technologies for authentic assessment. But before we do that, we need to understand what authentic assessments are, or what is an authentic assessment. From there, we're going to look at talking about 21st century skills. From there, we will look at the technologies that exist for authentic assessment. Then we are going to introduce you or reintroduce you to Google Jamboard. From there, you will create an authentic assessment. And right at the end, we are going to have a moment just to reflect and give feedback on what we have learned. Without further ado, I am going to hand over to Shayla.
Thank you, Pearl. Just let me share my screen quickly and then we'll be on our way. Okay, is my slide visible yet? Okay. So getting into authentic assessments, we first need to talk about what assessment is. Ooh, for some reason, it's not moving. There we go. So assessment is a critical component in the online space, and it provides students with an idea of their progress in a course and identifies the strengths and weaknesses and serves as a measure of whether a student is able to achieve the course's learning objectives. And although each of these characteristics serve as a valuable instructional or pedagogical function, it's also important that assessments engage students and prepare them with the skills that they will need in their future courses and even in their careers. So assessment isn't just important from a student perspective. With the online space becoming increasingly crowded, it is critical that institutions ensure that they are offering the courses and experiences that students are looking for. In a study done in 2018 by Magda and Aslani, and I hope I didn't butcher that name, but they found that 74% of online university students are pursuing their program or degree for a career-focused reason, such as transitioning to a new career, updating the skills required for their current job, increasing their wages, or meeting employers' requirements. And because the majority of online students are career-focused, courses and degree programs must provide those ties to the real world for institutions to stand out in the online landscape. Given its importance to the online classroom, assessment can be a great starting point for integrating this type of relevance to the course. So authentic assessment is the idea of using creative learning experiences to test students' skills and knowledge in realistic situations. Authentic assessment measures students' success in a way that's relevant to the skills required of them once they have finished their degree or their course. So in this presentation, we'll discuss the benefits and challenges of this type of assessment, and my colleague Pearl will tell you how to incorporate authentic assessment in your course. But before we dive into what an authentic assessment is and how to create one, we need to actually look at what makes an assessment authentic. In 1998, Wiggins identified a few key criteria. Firstly is that the assessment is realistic, so it has those links to the real world. It also requires judgment and innovation for both students and educators. Authentic assessments ask the student to do the subject, and this has ties to the assessment being for learning as opposed to off learning. It replicates or simulates the context in which adults are tested, in inverted brackets really, to in the workplace and in their personal life. It also assesses the student's ability to efficiently and effectively use a repertoire of knowledge and skills to negotiate a complex task. And lastly, it allows for appropriate opportunities to rehearse or practice, consult resources, and get feedback on and refine their performances or drafts. Simply put, an authentic assessment is one that requires students to apply what they've learned in a new complex circumstance or situation. Typically, this can take one of two forms: a real-world assessment that requires students to engage in actual situations in their field, such as a WBA, or realistic assessments that are relevant in nature but have students engage in situations that mimic the real world, such as a case study. Regardless of the type, authentic assessment is often coupled with opportunities for rehearsal or practice. Authentic assessments are often scaffolded through a course and allow the instructor to provide feedback that students can then implement in subsequent drafts. So unlike your traditional assessments, such as an essay or a multiple choice question, authentic assessments ask students to engage in scenarios or practices that are complex, realistic, and most times messy. In 2009, Shank identified a few key challenges of assessments in the online environment, where you would expect a bell curve of results, using the wrong type of assessment, not creating a valid enough assessment, and using poorly written MCQ tests. Although authentic assessment is unlikely to overcome all of these challenges, it offers a number of benefits in an online course. So most notably, authentic assessment breaks from that traditional paradigm of multiple choice or automatically scoring tests and quizzes. This traditional paradigm leads students to believe that learning means staying up all night and cramming to memorize terms or expected answers, and immediately emptying out their memory the next day. Instead, authentic assessments tend to be more student-centered, as they ask students to demonstrate their learning through hands-on activities. Rather than asking students to memorize or recall facts, authentic assessments ask students to actively participate in situations that require them to apply the principles that they've learned about in the instructional material. Therefore, it's not about recalling, it's about performing, which ideally will motivate a student to engage in the course and succeed in their endeavors. Authentic assessments also aid in developing metacognition, and we know that metacognition is thinking about the way we think. So through thinking and analyzing and controlling cognitive processes, the students are more engaged. And lastly, deep and meaningful learning will be covered a little bit more in Pearl's presentation, but we know that this involves critical thinking and creative writing and thinking, problem solving, and metacognitive skills. As beneficial as authentic assessments can be, they do present with challenges. First and foremost, authentic assessments require a lot more time for both the students and for the instructors when compared to traditional assessments. For students, authentic assessments typically take longer to complete than the average quiz or test because these assessments are task-based, and these also need to be scaffolded over a number of modules. In addition to this, students might be more accustomed to traditional assessment, meaning that despite the advantages that I just stated, they might need some time to adjust to this new method. And also educators do need to adjust to the new method of using the authentic assessment. For instructors, time is also of concern. Developing an authentic assessment can be an intense experience. That requires course writers to identify and research relevant tasks. These tasks need to be applicable to the students in the different areas and align those tasks with learning objectives and instructional materials. In addition, unlike traditional assessments, grading an authentic assessment is largely subjective. Because these types of assessments typically address more complex levels of learning, grading will likely take much longer. Authentic assessments typically require detailed, personalized, and specific feedback, meaning that as beneficial as they can be for students and your course, they will require additional time to design and implement. And maybe, based on last week's presentation, we might want to think about ungrading. Jokes. So when developing an authentic assessment, the field that you are working in will guide how you develop that authentic assessment. So for example, in health sciences, you can create an authentic assessment to assess a mock patient's health and their plan, then implement that patient's care. So we've explored the benefits and the drawbacks of authentic assessment. Let's move on to the steps involved in designing one. We all know that the learning objectives are the cornerstone of the course. They communicate what students should be able to do and what skills they'll develop during the course. So it goes without saying that developing an authentic assessment should begin with these objectives. By starting this process with an objective in mind, you ensure that the authentic assessment you're developing will align with the objective and any corresponding instructional material. In most instances, you'll want to focus on the macro objective, and that is an objective that illustrates what students will be able to do by the conclusion of the course. When you look at your objectives, it's also important to keep relevance in mind. After all, one of the major benefits of authentic assessment is how it allows students to engage in a relevant or new environment. So you'll want to make sure that your learning objectives lend themselves to that type of activity. If your learning objectives are already measurable and student-centered, it shouldn't be a problem. After identifying the learning tasks, the learning objectives you are looking to measure through your authentic assessment, you can then start defining what students will actually do. So given that assessment should be, in essence, authentic, start by looking at what professionals in your field do on a daily basis and how those tasks might relate to your selected learning objective. Ultimately, the relevance of your assessment to students' lives or goals should be clear. In fact, it might actually be helpful to state the relevance explicitly at the outset of the assessment. If you are struggling to identify a relevant task, consider starting with the verb of your learning objective. You'll find that you're able to define your task by looking at what the objective asks the student to do. For instance, if the objective for a medically related course is that students will be able to analyze or critically reason decisions made in terms of patient management, consider creating a fictional scenario in which students have to make decisions for patient and analyze the impact of those decisions. Looking at your objectives verb also ensures that your assessment aligns with your learning objective, which is a pillar of effective course design. So if the previous step was to define what students will do to complete the authentic assessment, this step focuses on how you'll know whether they've done it well. After all, just because an authentic assessment doesn't look like a traditional assessment, it doesn't mean that the goal isn't the same. You still need to have an indication of how well students have performed and whether they've achieved mastery of the skill. With this in mind, it's important for these performance criteria to align with the nature of your task. To return to our example from earlier, you'd want to make sure that the way you measure students' performance is reflective of or similar to the expectations they would encounter in a real-life scenario. For example, you'd want to create performance criteria specific to how students should make the patient's, oh goodness, I'm about to cough now. Sorry about that. You'd want to create performance criteria specific to how students should make the patient management decisions and how accurately or appropriately they analyze those decisions. Okay. Sorry about that. The dust in there is really catching in my throat here. So moving on, rubrics are a powerful tool for many assessment types, and they're an essential component of authentic assessment. After all, authentic assessments are fairly subjective, and rubrics help to ensure instructors are grading fairly and consistently from one assessment to another assessment and from student to student. However, as Corbus pointed out previously, rubrics don't necessarily mean consistency. But with this in mind, once you've identified the task, the essential performance criteria, the next step is to develop a rubric. You might be thinking that this seems pretty similar to the last step. It is. When you design your rubric, you should use the performance criteria you've identified and come up with measurable levels. Once you've developed your rubric, consider presenting it to the students before they begin the assessment. And that way they know what you expect of them and can more readily gauge their own performance. So authentic assessment has this outstanding ability to make long-lasting impact, not only on the course, but also on the students enrolled in it. By providing students with an opportunity to test their skills in new and relevant situations, you'll prepare them for how they'll be assessed in professional lives and show them that there is relevance of the course outside of their classroom. I'm going to hand over to my colleague Pearl now.
Thank you so much, Shayla. So sorry to see you leaving, Penny. Hope you'll be able to catch up on the recording. Colleagues, special shout out, special thank you to Prof. Cook for bringing Shayla a glass of water. Thank you so much, Prof. Cook.
From the fourth floor.
From all the way from the fourth floor. We thought we're like, what's going on? Thank you so much, Prof. All right, so I'm going to ask Shayla to share the slides once again. All right, so let's talk 21st century skills. I hope you made a note of the quick note that I shared in the chats. And I like that Shira is participating in the chats. I encourage you to do that. I think I saw Keenan give a round of applause to Shayla. I'm going to give you a second just to give Shayla a round of applause, because now we understand what an authentic assessment is and what is required of us as in our different spaces in learning with regard to authentic assessments. All right, so I'm going to leave you in the chats with Shayla while I focus on talking to you about the 21st century skills. So for the most part, a Google search will give you a variety of skills. And truth be told, we all have a rough idea of what they are. But the biggest question I have is, can these skills be taught in the classroom? Also, are they transferable? And because today we're talking assessment, can these 21st century skills be assessed in higher education? Truth be told, a great debate can ensue in an attempt to answer these questions. And for that reason, we will look at the 4 C's of learning. I like to think of them as the 4 C's of life, or we can call them the 4 C's of the 21st century. The 4 C's of life, because as you will see, they apply to every facet of our lives. I like to think of myself as an advocate of the 4 C's because I believe that mastery of these 4 C's informs mastery of all the other 21st century skills. Ultimately, we do not just want students to engage just for the sake of engaging. We want to give students an opportunity to tap into the 21st century skills, because the healthcare space is a human space. Before I show you what the 4 C's are, I would like to hear from you or see from you if anyone can guess what the 4 C's are. So you can type in the chat, you can raise your hand. Anyone want to take a shot at what the 4 C's are? Let me see in the chat, is someone typing? Or they're all very shy. All right. We have one thing, collaboration. Yes, correct. Collaboration. I see lots of collaboration. There's creativity, communication. So far, we have 3. One more. I need one more. Yes, communication. I like this. Collaboration, creativity, compassion. That's a good C, Dr. Hall. That's a good caring. Those are good. I just need one more. One more.
Critical thinking.
Perfect. Dr. Anastasia says critical thinking, yes. And I believe this is because she was in my previous session. Did Kat raise her hand? No. Okay. All right. That's fine. Yes, Ndilega, thank you so much. Critical thinking. Those are the 4 C's. Shayla, please go to the next slide. Thank you so much for participating. All right. So here are the 4 C's of life, 4 C's of 21st century skills, 4 C's of learning. Because I'm speaking to members of the Faculty of Health Sciences, it's important to note that we are aware that there are 4 C's of primary care, which are first contact, comprehensiveness, coordination, and continuity. And we can all agree that they are the perfect basis for another professional learning series that's just waiting to happen. There are also the 4 C's of patient care, the 4 C's of patient engagement and satisfaction. But believe me, the list of 4 C's depends on who you are. But because we are in our session, our 4 C's will focus on communication, collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking. As we look at the 4 C's of learning, we're also going to look at Bloom's taxonomy in an attempt to show you how we can integrate technology to not only enhance and engage students, but to promote higher order thinking and essentially achieve deep and meaningful learning. So communication. Simply put, communication is being able to convey an idea quickly and clearly. So I asked the question, what are the 4 C's? And quickly and clearly, each of you were able to share your idea of what the 4 C's could potentially be. It could also be, can a student read a patient's body language? Is a student aware of their own body language while speaking to a patient? Is a student able to explain a diagnosis or course of treatment to a patient in a way that a patient will not forget or make the mistake of overdosing on, I don't know, Panado maybe? Can a student use the technology in the field effectively to communicate? Can a student communicate that they understood the assignment? Colleagues, we can all agree that being able to communicate is simply not enough. Collaboration. Collaboration is being able to work well with others to achieve a common goal. When we collaborate, we achieve a common goal, but there are skills we acquire along the way and skills that we are forced to learn as well. Collaboration is not pretty. We've all done group assignments, we've all worked in teams, and we can definitely attest to the fact that it's quite challenging. But at the same time, it gives us insight into who we really are, but also gives us insight into who is who in our teams. It helps students to know when to speak up, when not to speak up. Again, collaboration is multi-layered and requires a student to apply other 21st century skills. For example, being able to communicate. Critical thinking. Being able to not only solve problems, but to also be able to critique and explore the world with or without the facts. Critical thinking requires students to ask questions and be actively involved in the world around them. I like to say critical thinking is being able to figure it out one way or another. Most importantly, without removing the educator, being able to figure out one way or another, while guided by the educator. Then the fourth C, creativity. I hate to say it, but creativity is about being able to think outside the box. Now, I know we can deliberate on what all of that means in different settings and scenarios, and we can all agree that it's broad and very cliche. And I'm sure we all know a variation of this saying. It's important to note that creativity may not come naturally to some. And I know some people get cagey when they are required to be, in inverted commas, creative. But remember, creativity is not just for artists. It's a skill that can be learned or cultivated in the classroom. According to Bree Stouffer, creativity allows students to embrace their inner strengths, from big picture planning to meticulous organization. Creativity and innovation are important in healthcare. Ultimately, creativity is being able to think differently. Think about all the medical procedures that are now in existence because someone or a group of people were willing to dare to be innovative and creative. All the 4 C's work best when combined with each other and other 21st century skills. Quick reminder, we are talking about technologies for authentic assessments. And in order for students to illustrate what they have learned, they need to use the 4 C's. Let's talk Bloom's taxonomy. Thank you, Shayla. So remember, no 21st century skill exists in isolation. And for that reason, we cannot assess one 21st century skill. Thanks to Bloom's taxonomy, we have somewhat of a blueprint on how to structure what we assess to promote higher order thinking and to ensure deep and meaningful learning. Simply put, Bloom's taxonomy is a hierarchical model that categorizes learning objectives into varying levels of complexity, from basic knowledge and comprehension to advanced evaluation and creation. And if you can just take a moment to look at Bloom's taxonomy, you should be able to identify moments or sections or parts of this taxonomy where the 4 C's can be applied. All right, we're going to move on to the next slide. All right. So before we go into what technologies exist for authentic assessments, I just want to share what Karen Ogan says. She says, students are growing up in a world where information is just a few clicks away. Employers aren't looking for employees that have the answers. They are looking for people that can interpret and use information to solve complex problems. Authentic learning prepares students for a future career through practice of the real-world problem-solving skills used by professionals in the workplace, many of which Shayla mentioned before. So now let's look at the technologies that you can integrate into your authentic assessments. Thank you for that thumbs up. Is it possible to collaborate with different goals in mind? Dr. A, that's a very good question. Hopefully you'll be able to answer it when we go into creating our own authentic assessment. Okay, so Google has a plethora of tools or technologies that you can use. There's Google, simply just searching, but there's also Google Classroom. Then there's TED-Ed, which uses a variation of videos. And I know we've seen TEDx, okay? And as well as Jamboard. Please remember, or please note that Jamboard is the tool or our preferred technology for this session. Then there are open educational resources. I would like to check in. Does anyone know what open educational resources are, or have you heard of them? Okay, I see that some people have not. I encourage you to explore these because not only are they free, but they're very readily accessible, not just to yourselves, but to your students as well. There's courses, there's materials, varieties, regardless of the subject that you teach or the module that you are responsible for. Open educational resources are a powerful technology to use. Then we also have, all right, so these are grouped together because I'm sure you've seen or heard we have Padlets, then there is Trello, then there is Flipgrid. So all three of these are online platforms that allow you to assign students tasks that they can complete using these platforms. The next one. Then there is Prezi and Canva. We chose to include these because both of them are each of our favorites, Prezi being Shayla's favorite and Canva being mine, because not only are they great for people that are creative, but even if you're not feeling too creative, they are creative resources that are readily available, not just for you to create engaging presentations, but also for your students to use when they are performing or showing you what they have learned as well. The world of social media. I know it's a bone of contention in many classrooms or in many lecture halls, and using them can be a bit tricky and will require you to do a lot of resources. But it's important to note that there is a wide variety of social media tools that you can tap into, maybe for research purposes or even to include them in your sessions. But it's important to note that it needs to be done strategically, also keeping in mind the POPI Act and many other considerations as well. Next up, we have, I think, my personal favorite, which is Microsoft Office 365. And you will note that I mentioned Microsoft Teams. If you notice what I did at the beginning of the session, we engaged, we participated together while using those features. And throughout the session, I've been encouraging you to use the chats, to use the reactions, to open your mic, to speak, because that's one way of not just checking that you are with me, but also it could be a great way of giving students an opportunity to ask you questions and engage and to assess whether they understand the concept or you might need to go deeper in the next session or in that particular session. There's also Microsoft Sway. Then we have Pixabay, and I'm sure there are many others where you can find free images. All right, so I know a lot of the times trying to find pictures that relate to what you're doing or what you're talking about can be very tricky, but it's important to note that you can use them, but your students can also use them. So you could create an assessment that says, go on Pixabay and look for images of patients or of doctors talking to patients, for example. Then the last two, I think. Yes, the first one being Canvas. Canvas has a lot of tools that you can use for authentic assessments. There's the discussions and there's also the assessments, but also just how you structure your different sessions in your different modules and in your courses as well. And last and certainly not least, we have the university's library, where you can get your e-resources. So you could center a whole authentic assessment by directing students to the e-resources and not just giving them a challenge, but also giving them an opportunity to explore the variety of resources that the university has on hand. Are there any questions? All right, so there are no questions. Now we are going to introduce you to Jamboard. And for the purposes of this section of our presentation, I'm going to need you to engage and participate, but I'm also going to share my screen. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to share the link. But do not, I repeat, do not click on the link until I say click on the link. All right. Hi, Dr. A.
Hi, Pearl, and wonderful presentation so far.
Yeah.
I just want to throw a question to you and Shayla. In terms of inclusivity, the things you've shown, the 21st century ways of engaging with technology, for your blind students or for your disabled students or for the students who doesn't really have the means. Maybe they don't have a smartphone or they are somehow resource disabled for whatever reason. So the students on the margin for either physical issues, social issues, or whatever issues, how do we ensure that they also benefit or engage in 21st century learning, or engaging with all those lovely tools that you've shown, mindful of their disabilities? Thanks.
That is a brilliant question. Right. I'm going to say, as an instructional design intern, it's been drilled into my mind, accessibility, and I'm very happy that you brought this up. I'm going to hand over to Shayla.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you for that question, Dr. A. I wasn't expecting that at all. But there are assistive technology that helps students with learning disabilities, including things like Kurzweil 3000, Dragon Naturally Speaking. So if we are using a certain type of technology, those applications are basically add-ons that you would have to allow for that inclusivity for those students. So there are things that we would have to ensure that students are included in all regards. Hope that has answered your question. There are obviously more that we would like to research and look into and possibly think about for future sessions. Thanks, Dr. A.
Thanks, Ms. Pillay.
Thank you so much. And I believe it's also important to note that quite a few of the apps or the technologies that we shared do have assistive technologies. For example, in this session, ideally, we should have the transcript recording. I know in South Africa, it's very tricky because the way we pronounce and enunciate, there's also the added 11 official languages and other languages that we have going on. But there's also a lot that can be done even in, for example, using a video, making sure that there is a transcript that is available as well. So it's not just the different learning disabilities, but also how different people, the different learning styles that exist as well. Those are also very important things to be taken into consideration when creating authentic assessments. I'm looking at our time. Can I just have a second to consult with Shayla? All right, so I am going to share my screen. Just make sure I'm sharing the right thing. Okay, so first things first, most of the apps also have accessibility checkers. Thank you so much for that note, Ashad. And this is the beauty of the professional learning series, is that we get to not only share what we know, but also learn from each other. Okay, so I almost left the meeting. I'm going to. This is why Shira said it shouldn't be so close. Okay, so I have shared the link to the Jamboard, but I'm going to now show you what a Jamboard looks like. Okay, so this is Jamboard. It's It's an app or platform created by Google. It's a great tool for collaboration, and it's the tool that you will all be using to collaborate on creating an authentic assessment. Okay, so over here you can rename it, okay, which I have already named. A lot of the time it will just be Untitled, so you would simply click on Untitled and then you would be able to rename it. From there we have the pen, which allows you to do this. Then you have an eraser. You also have the pointer. Then you have the sticky notes, which allow you to, okay? So you can create sticky notes, then have many sticky notes in whatever order that you choose to have them in as one way of collaborating. You can add images, not just from your device, but from the internet, from your camera, from Google, from your Google Drive, etc. Then you also have the option of using a circle if you want to do a diagram. You can type in it. Okay, and then you have the laser. I just think the laser is really cool. So you can set your background to whatever background you choose, but also you can clear the frame. Now I'm going to ask us to test out this Jamboard to see if what I have shown you really works. And before that, it's important to ensure that everybody can access your Jamboard. So if you click on share, then you are able to give access to maybe your entire class or anyone who has the link, and which is something that I have done over there. So I'm going to ask you to either write something with a pen. Actually, please put a sticky note with your name and surname and the department that you are from. Remember, the sticky note is over here. So we click on the sticky note. So I will say Pearl, Tilvu, and DFMPC. Oh, I clicked. Oh, okay.
So Pearl, I guess I'm one of the excluded students of your session. I'm on my phone and I
Okay.
don't have Jamboard installed. So it's now installing. So maybe those are some of the issues I possibly was referring to earlier. What kind of phone, what kind of device, what storage memory, those info that students need to know when you speak to accessibility that possibly they receive from the get-go to say you need to have this type of a device, this amount of storage, this apps, and so on and so forth. But you'll see my sticky note hopefully in a few seconds when it's done downloading. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I have given you access to type as well. Sorry, I had only set it to viewer. Dr. A, that is a very good question. It was one of the things that were challenging for us for creating the session, because we wanted it to be one where you engage with the technology, but also we had to consider all of those elements. So I think it's something that we did say that it would maybe this in and of itself should be a series, because this is only just the introduction, letting you know what is possible, and then willowing down to your specific situation or your specific scenario as well. But thank you so much for bringing that up. So as you will notice, I'm rearranging and sorting and moving things around, which is also what you can do. So just imagine you are all working on a project and you're all making your notes from wherever you find yourselves. Okay. Let me just check in the chats. I still can't access. Nika, I hope you are able to access it now, because if we check on my screen, I've given anyone access and I've allowed all of you to be collaborators, to be editors. All right, so with only 5 minutes, oh, but we did take 5 minutes before. Okay, all right. So we waited 5 minutes, so we're going to take 5 minutes just to yes, I see Prof. Cook is drawing as well. I like that. So we have Shayla, we have Nogulunga from School of Education, We have Njabulo from DFMPC, Nonhlanhla from Awesome. We have Dr. A from DFMPC and MFC as well. All right. So while you are playing around, we have Keenan as well. All right. So while you are playing around, we are going to go back to the slides. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to share my slides because now we're going to take the next few minutes. You just hold on. There we go. You are now going to, based on your experience and what we've been doing thus far, taking into consideration the valid points that Dr. A raised, we'll give you 7 minutes to create an authentic assessment on the topic of your choice. We are asking that you use the DFMPC and CHSE content as your reference, and you will be given an opportunity to contribute to the rubric that we have created for this assessment. And your assessment needs to meet the criteria set out in the rubric, and you must use a Jamboard. Okay, so we're going to give you the rubric in your groups, but we're going to ask Angie to split you up into the different break rooms, and we will share these instructions as well. Are there any questions before Angie separates us? People are having fun with Jamboard. I like this. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing. Please excuse me. Please, I need to join the 5. Nika, thank you so much for joining us. We hope you were able to glean as much as you possibly could, and all the best with your meeting. All right, so I'm going to ask Angie to put you into the different groups. Angie, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Just hold on for me.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so welcome back, everyone. We have 3 minutes. Wow. All right, so what we're going to do is actually just share the rubric that we came up with, and then just hear from you quickly. Sorry, I just need a moment to catch. There we go. All right, so this is where the technology of it all comes in. All right, so this is what the assessment would have looked like, or what you would have experienced it to be. So for example, you would have put group A or group 1 or group 2, and then we have the authentic assessment, which would have been, for example, how to make a cup of tea, and remembering that the 4 C's are the skills that you would have been testing to see, like you've just walked everyone through how to make tea, and now you are setting out your instructions. So we decided to create a general and a basic, as simple as possible, rubric, which had 7 criteria. So the first and the most important one was to ensure that the learning objectives were clearly stated. There must be a link to real-world problems. Again, the 4 C's: communication, critical thinking, collaboration, creativity, but also most importantly, the content as well. So with 1 minute left, we will be sending out an example of what we spoke about, and we will be sending out links to the different technologies and how to use them. We will edit it and add an element of how to use these tools in a way that is accessible as well. I'd like to know from those remaining, are there any questions or comments, any feedback from the session? Okay, so in the chats over here. Okay. All right. That is it from us, colleagues. Thank you so much. Wish we had more time. I did not get the link into any group. Dr. Hall, I'm really sorry about that. Hopefully we can do I think another session where we literally take the time out to create the session so that it's easier for you to create authentic assessments on your own for your different sessions as well. This brings us to the end of today's session. Thank you all for not just engaging and participating, but for enhancing this professional learning series. A special thank you to Shayla for agreeing